Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Midnight Stream, the stream where we get everything done. We have many wonderful people joining us whose names I will change in just a moment. I want to thank everybody who rolled with us to the end. We're going to roll a little bit quick because I can feel my sanity slowly slipping away, and I feel like it will start to quickly slip away. But we are going to get the last four done. I want to say thank you for everybody who showed up. I especially want to thank everybody who rolled until the end. It's Larro, that's Mitch, that's Mikey V, that's Bryce. Like they sat through this entire thing to be here, and I want to make it work their while the best I possibly can. So let's start out with San Diego State's Matt Mitchell, the tank himself. What are the five most important things about Matt Mitchell?
So the big one, you mentioned it in his introduction, is that he's really strong, and that's something I really value in a prospect, is just if they're physically strong, it allows them to be more positionally versatile. Another thing that's really big with Matt Mitchell is like he's very inconsistent. He was a lot more consistent last year when he had an elite pick and roll playmaker passing him the ball in Malachi Flynn. But this year, when he had to take on more usage, he stepped back a little bit. So trying to find that consistency is a huge thing for him. I'm not one who believes in like single swing skills, but if there was one for Matt Mitchell, it would be the third part of him, and that's like sort of the movement ability. When you're built like he is, and you know he's 6'6", he's a wing forward type player. You have to reach a certain movement threshold to really be able to survive defensively on those guys, because the utility he could have as a small ball five in like playoff lineups is negated if he can't move well enough laterally or navigate a screen things like that. And then the other one, it kind of ties into the consistency, offensive context. Like I mentioned last year, played with Malachi Flynn, had a much more set offensive context around him where he got to be the secondary playmaker or play finisher, and this year he had to do a lot more I don't want to even say like creation, because he wasn't usually like bringing the ball up, but as a wing he was, especially in big moments, tasked with handling the ball a lot and trying to find his own offense. And then the final one is just the shooting. I mentioned it, consistency. He's sort of been an inconsistent shooter, and it's just what level can he get to as a shooter? Can he be weaponized in any way as a shooter, or is he more of a exist on offense type shooter? So those are like the five things I'm looking at.
Yeah. Again, it can't be mentioned enough. His tankness like stands out really starkly. You can't complain about the quality of this, guys, because I had to mirror it from the video app because it took a while to stream, to get to the stream. Everyone here is familiar with their clips. There's once in Mo and then once in slow Mo. As we can see with Mitchell, like he is immediately just like a really strong dude. When he's in pick and roll, if he's able to turn a corner, he can hold defenses hostage because of how far they have to help over. Like if there is not a person between him and the rim, he will cause damage. Do you feel like that's a fair assessment, Bryce?
Yeah, and we'll see later in this just how he can leverage that strength around the rim. But yeah, he really sort of started to figure himself out as a pick and roll ball handler, I think, this year. He started to kind of figure out his body more, and he's just so strong. And that's something that's really, I think you mentioned it with Jaden Springer. It's like if you can just be stronger than the guy guarding you, and it really stands out here because for a lot of this game, he's guarded by Derek Alston Jr., who is not very strong, and he can kind of use that to his advantage, especially later into the second half. But yeah, I mean, that's the big thing you're looking at, is he's a 6'6" wing, 6'10" wingspan, and he is really strong.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to note he's not like strong for the Mountain West. Like even in games they play out of conference, like it does jump off the page even relative. Like oftentimes you'll get like Mountain West bigs that are like fairly athletic, and then you'll have like JaVale McGee, who is like NBA athletic, but at Nevada. And that can be difficult to evaluate, but it's also something that when you see out of conference games and you can like generally see dudes that are this built and this established, it works out well. How do you feel about the passing?
it's again, it's sort of inconsistent. I think when he's in a spot that he's comfortable, like a more set offense, like he makes the right reads a lot of times. He's never ever going to be like an advantage creation passer, right? That's not his game, but I think he can be a smart passer. And also there in that last play that we saw, like you got to see what sort of separates him from a lot of these sort of like second round UDFA wing bets is that he has some handle flashes. I mean, that spin move into jumping right into the big's chest and a tough finish is sort of not something you see from like maybe an EB Watson from Dayton, right? Who I like as a UDFA guy, but Mitchell sort of separates himself in that area. But the passing with Mitchell is it's not super reactive, I think, and that's sort of an issue. It's going to make it to where he can't be like a high usage guy at any point, even in bench units, because I don't think he has that tilted defense move, create the advantage with that pass. It's just but I think he can kind of keep an advantage with the second pass, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you like him more than somebody like Raekwon Gray, who's sort of like the same physical, not the same physical profile, but like the same idea, but at a high major institution like Florida State? Do you feel like the shooting difference and the passing flashes are enough? I mean, Raekwon's also like sort of not athletic, like sneaky, not an athletic guy.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. It's not even necessarily the passing. It's just I think it's the mix of shooting, and that I think Matt Mitchell is a better athlete. Like I think Raekwon is going to be pigeonholed into sort of a 4-5 role. And this right here is an interesting example of why I think maybe you can play Matt Mitchell at the 3. And just that maybe, like, if he could just exist out there almost like these guys, I hate that this name gets thrown around all the time, but like Marcus Morris isn't like a 3, but if you want to put him out there at the 3 for like 10 minutes, he'll survive. Like if Matt Mitchell can just do that, that separates him from someone like a Raekwon Gray, who I just don't think is quick enough, and also doesn't have the vertical pop of Matt Mitchell to maybe be like a help side rim protector at the 4.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, if you just like looked at their physical profile, you'd think they'd be switched. And like you'd want Mitchell to have some of Gray's skills and Gray to have some of Mitchell's skills. And it is fascinating that you have like the mid-major guy who's just a like clear-cut better athlete than the high major guy. That's a fun inversion. With Mitchell, do you have a term for these guys that are like conditional 3s? Like they're like, I don't want to say break glass in case of emergency, because like you can really use them to harm, certain types of offense. But like, what would be your pitch for like this is a positional archetype?
Maybe like versatile forward. I'm not one for like nomenclature. I suppose that's not my strong suit. But like, just like if you look around the league, like a lot of good teams have players like Matt Mitchell. Yeah. Even the Bucks. I mean, I wouldn't. Anyone who brings PJ Tucker up as a comparison is fooling themselves. But even like a Bobby Portis, like completely different athletic profiles, but like sort of that like 4, but more of a 5 sometimes, could just sort of like exist in like a forward role, right? And just a lot of teams have that. Obviously, like I mentioned, Marcus Morris or even like Nick Batum, you could say like just exist as a forward, and if you can move up or down a spot, that creates versatility in and of itself, even if you're not particularly versatile on defense, like inherently. Like Stone just talked about Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who is versatile because he can switch, and he's sort of an interesting bet as like a pick and roll defender. That's not really Matt Mitchell. It's just that Matt Mitchell sort of fills a similar positional archetype, but can probably play the 3 more because he's just a little quicker and is built like he is. So even if he gets like someone gets a step on him, he can sort of put his chest down or chest like right into their shoulder and make them still work to keep that advantage. Like someone who has a good first step, but maybe doesn't have elite lean on like their second and third step. Like Matt Mitchell will be able to press them defensively if he really buys in there, which his defense was sort of inconsistent because he had to do a lot on offense this year. And but if you go back, I think the real tape to watch with Matt Mitchell, and I didn't with this game because this was my favorite prospect game of this year. Not Deuce versus Cade, of course, Derek Alston versus Matt Mitchell. But like last year, you get to see him play with Malachi Flynn on that team that almost went undefeated. Was a really like he bought in more defensively, and you got to see, I think, a bit more of what his NBA role would look like, and that there's a lot of good stuff there. I would have drafted him last year top 40 pretty easily. So that's I think you have to kind of get the whole picture with Matt Mitchell. You take this year, which was sort of the usage spike, and then last year, which was the playoff, like an elite prospect. I know Malachi went 29, but in my heart, he's an elite prospect. So
I mean, sort of I think that there's a real case to be made that like he's a better shooter than the numbers suggest. He's like 50, 35, 80 for his career. What do you make of the descending 3-point rate for his career, though? He started his career at about 50, like as a kind of like shoot first, shoot second guy, and now finished as a senior like as 33. Do you consider that to be a good sign for his prognosis, that he's a guy who will eventually be able to get up to higher 3-point usage in the league, or is this a case of a sign of a guy who maybe like isn't the level of shooter he was, or that was implicated by his freshman and junior seasons?
So I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually think it's a really good sign, because it ties into him. Like he, during those years from his freshman year to his senior year, he lost weight and sort of changed his body type a little bit. Not fully changed it, but he turned a lot of that fat into muscle. And you could see him sort of gain athleticism, even from last year to this year. That one play where he had that back cut into a dunk, like he probably could have dunked that last year, but he just seems more powerful, more confident this year. I think he just felt like he wanted to drive and create advantages more, and he thought that was by getting to the rim rather than spacing the floor, as he had more usage this year. I think he can really step up that 3-point volume a lot. Like he could be a guy who's like 65 in the 65 60, like just like a lot of his usage is sort of spot ups. He doesn't have like a lot of movement equity, I don't think, because his hips don't flip like that, like, but the occasional he's comfortable moving backwards on his shot, not necessarily moving forward. You even saw that as he hit that pull up little mid-range fade. He's more comfortable with sort of backwards momentum as a shooter. And then as a finisher, he likes to try and create forward momentum because he can get his shoulder into players.
So I think that, is there a specific archetype you like him defending best? Because like I think that you've made a good point about being able to throw 3 strong forwards, or 2 strong forwards and a big out. Who is the ideal Matt Mitchell defensive matchup or defensive archetype for his rookie contract when you can get the most value out of him as a UDFA or second round guy?
I mean, probably like if you're like a playoff team, it's going to be sort of like the connecting forwards that you're going to want him to guard. I think like a Nicholas Batum, or who am I thinking of on the Bucks? My brain isn't working right now.
It's okay.
But yeah, nothing compared to PD in terms of the grueling I've done today. But brain's still not working. But you don't want him guarding the other team's stars, right? You saw as we watched that tape, like he could struggle to navigate screens. You don't want someone who's gonna have to be run through screens. But I think he can guard the screen setters okay, and that's Nicholas Batum sometimes. And I think that with his body type, if he can have some freedom to step down into the paint and maybe muck up some stuff at the rim occasionally, he's a solid rebounder too. You want to be able to get there and boost yourself there. So that would be like sort of your off-ball wing forwards who aren't like elite shooters. But I also think he can guard down in a lot of instances. And like if you had to put him on like a Vika Zubac, like if they were playing him in the playoffs, like I think he could probably do that okay. You'd have to either switch or hard hedge, but I think like the ideal, like you want to put him on this person and that's his role, would be sort of the connecting forwards, connecting wings in the league. But I think what makes him interesting is that he doesn't need to only guard that person. He can maybe step up and guard a player who is going to try and slash a little bit more, or you could step down and guard a big, whatever it has to be. So that's sort of how I see that.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic cap, and like I think that finding like people who can guard connectors is going to be a playoff buzz, like a trend. That's the word. I was going to say buzz thought. Christ. For like the next 5 years or so, and like it's not going to be the sexiest idea, but like the lineups where you sort of have a unique player that is capable of targeting specific usage styles and covering, you know, these forwards that they don't do a specific much of anything, but they do a lot of little things, and presenting physical and aggressiveness challenges to them is going to be essential. Anybody have any other thoughts on Matt Mitchell?
I suppose I would just say at the end that like, and my general team building philosophy is that once you get past like pick 40, or you're trying to build the back end of your roster, like it should be built with guys like Matt Mitchell, position versatile wings, forwards, whatever it may be, because you never know when someone goes down, if you need them to step up, and those are the guys. You know, if Matt Mitchell say he's on a good team and their starting 3 goes down, so their backup 3 has to step into the role, he can maybe step into the role of a backup 3, even though that's not his ideal. He sort of has that in his game, and that's always sort of been what I've thought with like a lot of the undrafted free agents that really succeed. You know, like Robert Covington is obviously the main example, but even lesser guys, I still believe in Malik Fitz from last year. It's like they tend to be wings, they tend to be forwards, because those are the guys who are just going to have the most chances to play. Because guards and bigs are just inherently positionally less flexible.
All right, I think that it's hilarious that we've come into like I don't want to say unflexible, but like kind of a guy who looks like a muscle hamster as the idea of flexibility. That's the modern NBA right now.
As it should be, in my opinion.
6'6" super yoked guy who like I would say is kind of flexible, being like, this is what flexibility looks like now. All right. Up next, I believe we have ALPEREN SENGUN. So, I mean, this is let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's get it. Let's close this out. Let's close this out with some scandal. Larro, tell me about the 5 ideas of ALPEREN SENGUN, baby Jokic. Potentially. The next guy overrated by draft metrics, potentially. The guy who maybe gets a bump for not understanding how league ratings work. Talk to me.
Man, when I was asked to come on here, I was like stuck between 2 guys, and I ultimately chose SENGUN because dude is so polarizing. You know, you have people that believe, like you said, he's going to be the next Jokic. And then you have guys that are like, dude, why is he being even considered in the top 10? Dude can't even, do this and that. So I'm just like, for me, watching tape on him, as someone that has always like watched tape, but didn't really give my thoughts on Twitter or write articles, which is something I'm going to start doing in the future. Like seeing him is... Wow. I'm really impressed with, obviously, his post, being in the post, his ability to score down there, his balance down there, being able to pass out of the post. I think he's someone that in the next level you can use in short roll situations. I think he reads the floor really well from that position. I am not, before I go there, I won't go there too fast, but his footwork is very special. Like, I think that is something that needs to be said about him. And I'm sure everybody that's watched the stream and everybody that is on this stream knows about his footwork. But I think it's something that like can really help someone like him that is not the most athletic, that doesn't have the longest wingspan. It's a way to get leverage on guys and put them in better positions to be a beast down where he is, where he finished really well, where he has great touch. He can do that. But I think what I'm going to touch on a little bit too is the defense. Like what is the optimized role for him at the next level on defense? Because he can be a real liability. And I think
I'm hearing the turn. I'm hearing it started really positive. I was like, wow, Larro, I like, and then like you got to like the 6 or 7 straight compliment, but you're saying in this tone, I'm like, oh, I'm about to get knocked out with a feather, aren't I?
Dude, like you see all these great things on tape on the offensive side of the ball, and then when you go on the other side of the ball, there's just things that if I was in an organization in the top 10 that would put me off. And I just, there's some clips that we can talk about it, but there's just some things where teams, like smart basketball teams, are going to attack him. And I think there's going to be a point where you have to weigh the pros and the cons. And is he going to be Enes Kanter, or is he going to be?
We brought out the big guns.
Yeah. Or is he going to be what, people are Baby Jokic? Is he going to be that guy? But which I don't think I don't want to cap a guy, but I mean, I mean,
take it there. It's late. I mean, we only got 65 people watching. I mean, let's let this thing ring out.
Well, I'll just put it this way, man. I don't think he's Jokic. I think he's a great passer, but I think what makes Jokic is his creativity as a passer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Sengun is a pretty good passer, but I don't think that same creativity is there. And the other thing that puts me off too is his shooting. And the crazy thing about it is like he only averaged like, I believe, one attempt a game. And I think I don't want to just outright call him a bad shooter, because I think he needs to shoot more. I think that he needs to step out of his comfort zone and put the ball up there. And so us as evaluators can see, but also for himself to gain more confidence in that, because I believe he's someone at the next level. If he's not involved in pick and roll, if he's not in short roll, I don't think there's any advantage, any value to have him on the floor, because what are you going to do? Stick him in a dunker spot? It's not like he's a lob threat. I don't think that he's going to be a consistent lob threat.
I mean, it's pretty tough to be a like, I'm trying to be as I'm not trying to say diplomatic, but like as fair-minded as possible. But like the list of guys, like just speaking from like a query sense, the list of guys who are about 6'10" with a 6'11" wingspan that are lob threats is very, very short. And so you have to do something that's outlier as a lob threat to make that happen. So let's walk through this. Let's see the good. Let's see the bad. I want to hear all your thoughts. We're rolling into ALPEREN Sengun. I mean, I've had people beg me for this for months now.
So let me see what this is here.
It's in the order you sent, so if this is a little too grainy, feel free to pull it up.
Oh, okay. So another reason why I chose this game is because they had, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but Shanley, I believe, from FS. Mm-hmm. And he was playing the 5. So I wanted to see Sengun play the 4, because I just want to see what else he could do, in another position. And I think in this, the first clip, you're able to attack him off the dribble with ease. And if you have any type of handle that you can really take advantage, you can really take advantage of him, because he's just so slow-footed. He's not going to beat you to a spot. He's just someone that, quite honestly, you just hope that whoever he's guarding can't put the ball on the deck, and just he's able to just maybe stay in front of him just a bit. But what coverages do you think that he can do right now? Like at an NBA level, like what are the coverages you feel most comfortable with? Because like with every young big, you're basically like no young big is particularly good across the board. Yes. In coverages. And so like where do you feel comfortable right now? Because like I'm seeing a bit of like show right now. Yeah. Is that out of the picture? Or are you just thinking like straight drop? Like I think, is he big enough to drop? That's the thing, because that's the tough thing. Is like I don't know if he is big enough to drop. Because again, the explosiveness that he lacks, you know, if there's a lob, I mean, I don't think he has that type of athleticism that could stop that. I also don't think he has the foot speed and the lateral quickness to cut off a downhill guard, you know, and you know, snaking a pick and roll. I think I don't think he's that type of athletic guy, but that's the fun part about SENGUN, because you have to really, really dig deep and try to figure out and play like matchmaking a little bit, and it's like a puzzle with him on this side of the ball.
Okay, maybe let me try this a different way. What level of 4 do you have to have next to him to feel good about him playing drop?
Dude, I mean, I'm thinking you got to have.
Is it Isaac? Like, do we have to go real top shelf?
I think you do have to be. It has to be a top shelf guy. Okay.
I mean, and that's doable. Yeah. I mean, like we've seen that work in the NBA, where like your 5 is more offensively focused, and your 4 is just ultra rangy, and like usually those guys are also defensively focused. So you kind of have like a fire and ice pairing. That can work. It's just a little like your fire better be some real MF fire, because it can't be like a Bic lighter. Like that pairing will kind of get you at best the 8 seed.
Yes, and also too, I think you also have to have a pretty good point of attack defender too. Yep. So like, I just, and then you know, I do believe that he's still young, and I hate to keep doing that, but you know, I tell people all the time he's young, but it's like, I don't know about this, PD. Like maybe you can fill me in. Like, are there any examples of guys like a SENGUN in terms of on the defensive side of the ball that come in where you're like, man, I don't know what we can do with him on this side, but eventually are playable, you know, like for instance,
I mean, Jokic has an outlier thing. Like this is, I guess the reason why calling somebody baby anything is never fair. It's never worked out for anybody in any direction. It's often insulting to the NBA pro. It's often insulting to, you know, it's insulting to the player who's working hard to be themselves. Yep. But the reality is that, like, have you ever seen anybody move Jokic off spots? I've seen a lot of people forearm shiver him and get nowhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the very least, he's holding a spot. What is SENGUN's outlier ability in a coverage? And like that's really what we're hunting for in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
And like if the answer is like he doesn't have it, that's fine. You can still build around him. There's still ways of maximizing the offense. It just makes it makes those offensive achievements you talked about earlier, getting the shooting up volume, like doesn't matter if they go in, doesn't matter if they go sideways. You've got to get them up, and you've got to get them up versatility. And like Vucevic is obviously going to be a reference point because he's another, you know, like white dude. And he's another cold white dude, so obviously he's gonna get, you know, he's a good comparison point. That being said, like Vucevic had to really expand his game to reach the point he is now, and so like as much as SENGUN is doing on the block, it's hard to build an offense around things on the block, just from a spacing perspective, because you're going to be making so many other puzzle piece accommodations that you may not have an offense that makes sense.
Yes, I totally agree, and there's a clip in here where he gets a wide open look from the top of the key, and he doesn't even look at the basket. Yeah. And for me, like I need to see the confidence out of him. I got to see him put that up. You know, if you are not like some beast, or I shouldn't say it that far. If you're not someone that can affect the game on the other side of the ball with, you know, pretty consistently, I need a lot of value out of you on the other side. And that's just the way I look at it. But like, so I need to see more confidence out of him. Put the shot up. One attempt a game is not good enough, at least for me.
Yeah. So, and I mean, like he does have like the projectability to, like, I like his touch. Yes. His ability to face up bodes really well for running some like really fun snug pick and roll stuff. Like I think that like his movement skills offensively, again, offensive and defensive movement skills are fundamentally different. As we just saw with Matt Mitchell, who like has some really like unique movement skills on both sides of the ball, partially because of his frame. Like with SENGUN, he has like these really great pivots. He uses his butt as good as basically any like teenager I can really remember.
Yep.
But a lot of that doesn't come into play on the other end. And for his archetype, you either have to bring a unique, like beyond like a unique profile offensively, or offer an outlier defensive tool where you can build the theory of a defense around. And at the end of the day, guys like Vucevic, the idea is that he can do well enough that Isaac can cover. That is at the heart. That's like, can you just be solid enough and then like let Jonathan Isaac handle the rest, and we'll build, some point of attack stuff, and we have Chuma, and like there is a theory there. I think that it's going to, the conditional sentence that gets Alperen Şengün to a playoff level has more conditions than Chuma and Jonathan Isaac. I think it's going to be more because you also have to balance things out offensively.
There was a clip, I believe it was a couple clips ago. He had got the ball in the post, and what I loved about it is just like, some may look at it and say, dude, it's just a, post touch and you passed it out. But for me, it's more so like at the next level in the NBA.
This is the one where he doesn't look right there.
Yes,
doesn't even look
right there. Doesn't even look. And you have to, I need to, I don't know, man. I need more confidence out of him to take that shot and to expand his game. And he's young, and if he can get into the, when he gets drafted, maybe they just hammer it home.
Because that looks nice. That looks nice. It looks good when he takes it, but with bigs of this profile, volume is going to be essential because you have to force coverage multiple from defenses, because that's where he's going to eat. Is that it's not just against centers, it's that he has to cause like the passing has to come out because teams are rotating. You have to be able to exploit multiple fronts of a defense if you're going to be this style of offensive player.
Yep.
And I think that this is the separation between guys like Jahlil Okafor, who is basically like, no, I'm like Jahlil Okafor was basically I'm trying to think of a non-slanderous, like he was like 40th percentile Lou Williams, but big. It's like, look, that's a fine player. It's just that like he was giving you the thing on, it was what it said on the box and not more, not less. And he's added as time went on. Like that's the difference. Şengün offers quite a bit more dimensions, but they have to be harmonic and make a defense think a number of different ways. And if shooting is not a component of that, man, does this get difficult.
Yeah. And there are some intangibles about Şengün that I do like from watching him. I mean, dude competes. He doesn't give up. He's, I believe there's a play in this game that I forgot to add. That's on me. That his guard came down, took an ill-advised jumper from three, and Şengün's in like the opposite corner 3 area, and dude sprints back and gets a block off the glass. Like that's stuff that I like to see. At least I like to see that. That means he has a motor. That means he cares. That means that he's not someone that's just not going to give it his all. And he actually, for someone that is not as athletic, if he can jump off 2 feet, he might put it on your head. So it's just he's got a lot to, like, the offensive side of the ball. Like I feel like that can definitely be worked on, and you can do that. But the defensive side of the ball is where it's going to be like, man, 1,000-piece puzzle where you gotta figure it out. You gotta get it done. Try a piece here, try a piece there. Try them in different things. Maybe you try the Jokic step up, the hedge, and then get back. But I don't think that's gonna work. But I mean, there's just some things you're gonna have to try with Şengün. But I've seen him in mocks go top 10. I'm not there. I
think there are circumstances where he can return top 10 value. I just think that you have to answer the puzzle piece. And I think one of those really important puzzle pieces is one that is really difficult because like there's not a way of mathematically proceeding. It's that the Turkish league was not as strong this year as it had been the year before because it is an import league. And if your analysis is like, oh, Turkey was a good league because X and Y, you're not considering the effects of the implications of COVID and how basically COVID affected Turkish finances, and finances affected their ability to import people. And like, I'm not saying that to take away from him. It's just that like, if half the programs left the SEC, it wouldn't be the SEC. Doesn't matter, what the level of competition is among the remaining 6. The bottom 6 have problems. If you replaced him with, I don't want to name another conference because I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but you get what I'm saying. Like football would not be the same if you replace half the SEC with a different conference lower on the totem pole. That is essentially what happened here. And to assume from your base, assume from metrics that the league that he plays was the one that occurred before the pandemic is, I don't want to say like dishonest, but I think that it is lacking a rigor of what is happening on the ground.
Yeah.
And like there are still good players in the Turkish league, but many imports were not present there. And he does get a boost in broad metrics because of the level of the Turkish league before he played in it, and the inability of really quantifying how that went.
Yeah.
Are there any more points on ALPEREN, Sengun? Any arguments that we feel like we haven't touched on? If anybody has a real, like, I feel like I'm pretty positive on him broadly. I just can't get to top 10 unless you have some really specific outlines. Is that generally an objectionable opinion? How are we feeling?
I'm okay. You know, let me say this, because if people are looking at the stream, they're probably like, this dude hates Sengun. No, like I am exactly where you're at. Like I'm pretty positive that he could. I shouldn't say like that positive, but I think he can be a good player. I think it's just going to take a lot of work, but I think he's going to get. I think he can get there. But as of right now, I don't think he gives you that top 10 quality. Like, let me ask you this: do you think in his rookie contract, do you think that there's potential that you could see that return during that rookie contract?
No, I think he's a for like the second contract, which I mean, if he doesn't return a rookie contract, then the likelihood is you aren't going to have to pay as much, which makes the second contract an easier value. Like there is a cataloging here, but I think that the most important thing is that assuming that low post translation automatically occurs because of the previous success of the Turkish league, which is my general just concern about, league modeling and people using outsized data that don't consider external forces, which has nothing to do with basketball. It's just my own issues with maybe doing a little bit of less research into some of this stuff.
I feel you.
Just a couple things I wanted to bring up. One is we heard about like the 6'10", 6'11" wingspan apparent measurements with Jokic and Vucevic a lot bigger.
Yes.
Like so much bigger.
Yeah.
So
Nurkic, much bigger.
That certainly helps. And yeah, so when you're talking about like concerns about him and drop coverage, everything there, agree with what you're saying about the Turkish league as well. The other thing that I kind of wondered, because we saw Kevin Pelton just released his kind of stat projections, and he had Sengun #1 by like a landslide.
Right.
I feel like they kind of like favor international guys, and like I think there were some years where like he was maybe like lucky that an international guy ends up like pulling out because they would have been higher in those projections. I wonder if Enes Kanter like stays and plays in the Turkish league, like if we're not like having some conversation about like the similarities statistically that
I mean
they both.
I think that
not to mention like in terms of measurements also.
I think Kanter would have done much worse things. Kanter was so ridiculously good. Like, Kanter would have made these numbers look like if Kanter was given the same league, Kanter might have averaged 40. Like, I'm not exaggerating. That dude was such a problem.
And you know what? You brought up
the Hoop Summit.
Yeah. Oh my God. That tape is vile. He did terrible things to those kids. But they should have arrested him at that Hoop Summit.
Man.
Oh my God. He saw chicken every time down.
It was so good. Yeah, that was a great
game. You guys talked about the wingspan, and it popped up in my head. In that very game, he was, I believe, at the level of the screen. His man popped, and he had enough room. If he had a bigger wingspan, he could have affected the shot. And the dude it was just like a walk-in, like practice jumper. Like he wasn't even worried about Sengun like closing out. And I'm like, if that dude ain't worried about, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are like, I am generally positive for, I am generally positive on Sengun long term. I just think that treating the translation being immediate is pretty dangerous, both for precedents and for like implications on how bigs operate, because like bigs do so many things that are very difficult to translate, especially league to league, where rules are different, where expectations are different, where like lineup theory is different. And this isn't an argument against modeling. It's an argument against the modeling within the pandemic using prior season data, and also not indexing a little too much on that stuff. But anyway, if you haven't watched Kanter Hoop Summit, it is on YouTube, and if he'd been allowed to go to Kentucky, man, whew. I think all right. Any last things on Sengun?
My only question is, and I've spent a ton of time on Sengun, probably too much, is just a part of me wonders like what he looks like scaled down past like a first or second option. I think that's some of my worry with him is he's seen as like a really elite offensive prospect. And if he was given the keys to an offense, maybe, and I guess that's part of my worry is like, if he doesn't shoot at volume, can he exist as not like a first or second option where he's given a lot of playmaking responsibility? That's just a general question I have.
I think so.
Okay, that's.
I think so. I just don't think that your team would be like. I think that the problem is that if he's the third option, you probably have two really good options, and that would mean that you would probably be expecting him to pick up a defensive load, and that's where I get concerned. Like I can buy the first two, but the implication of the other three is the implication of what that two would mean. Him having to carry a larger defensive burden as two players hold higher usages than him. I think he's always going to be a higher usage guy, regardless of what position he holds on the floor. But yeah, the defensive trade-off is the thing that's concerning. All right. Going from a guy with some questionable measurements to maybe the measurement king with the measurement king, Mikey Visenberg. That's how you do a segue. That's 12 hours in.
Let's go. Crushed
All right.
it.
Give me the 5 things about Scottie Barnes.
I think the thing that initially won me over with him was seeing the measurements. I had the chance to see him as a sophomore at the October minicamp in Colorado Springs and immediately saw that this guy has like damn near Kawhi Leonard like measurements at that age. Then you add in the fact that he's
some would say Xavier Tillman senior measurements.
Close enough. Yeah. Close enough. Probably not weight with X, right? Like he had weight.
Yeah. I just mean Xavier Tillman's measurements are still hilarious to me.
Very crazy. Very crazy. Yeah. Like Scottie like pretty much comes close to like +8, like with when you're talking about his height without shoes. But moving on. 5 things about Scottie Barnes. I think that he is an incredibly versatile defender. I think that he is somebody that like is a fantastic passer. And I know, people talk about him getting advantages and things like that. Like what he had to do for Florida State this year, I thought was very impressive. And I think that he is like, I even like, I looked on Synergy just for like his pick and roll as like a ball handler, and he was in the 99th percentile. It was like 1.325 points per possession, just with him as a ball handler in pick and roll. Now, in terms of derived offense, yes, like, there are things to work on. But yeah, the other thing is, and this is like kind of a thing that you just notice when you watch him very closely, the leadership, the communication. Mm-hmm. That was the thing that I remember you talking about, like when you did a Prep to Pro podcast, like let's throw it back there. And yeah, he constantly is talking with his teammates, and then the intangible factors with him as well. Yep. So yeah, like you just hear all these great things said about Scottie Barnes. People like being around Scottie Barnes. USA Basketball always had great things to say about him as he competed in a few FIBA events with them and went to those mini camps. And then, yeah, I just think there's a lot of versatility there as well. Of course, the shooting is like a major swing skill, and like, yes, it is something that hasn't really progressed very much. Nobody is really expecting Scottie to come in and start like all of a sudden like hitting pull-up jumpers or anything like that. But I think he just kind of like finds his way, and just has a great like court sense. And yeah, I think there were a lot of really great things that he showed at Florida State. A lot of great things he's shown as a prospect. I'll get into the rebounding with you guys later, because that's something I'm still kind of wondering what to think about that.
Yeah.
But I think like so much of his like weaknesses at Florida State were kind of like contextual with him having to be their point guard. Because I think like the other options just I like they didn't really have any. So when he was on the floor, like he kind of had to be that. And recruiting analysts that we know very well and respect, the day before Scottie Barnes committed, told me there was a chance he was going to a different university. I don't know if you know what that university is.
I do,
but
I know you do.
Yeah.
I'm sure you.
And then that very next day, he commits to Florida State and has this role. So yeah, getting into the clips, we see Scottie, and
this is Florida State starting point guard Scottie Barnes. Just to say, you got to say with
not starting point guard, but he's their point guard. And he immediately is on the wing, kind of rotates over and causes that travel. I felt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Scottie that always comes through is like the intensity with which he plays. I mean, a lot of guys do the clapping and the bouncing around, but like Scottie brings that on a possession by possession basis, and it's like it is truly infectious.
He does. A lot of clapping with Scottie Barnes.
Yeah, like that is just his way of like going through the day. Like for him, that is as rote as anything else. And like it does make, you can tell that people really enjoy playing with him because he makes like rotations fun. He makes sprinting a lane fun. I mean, on his Montverde team, the thing that he would love to do was he would love to get a windmill at tip off and just scream in somebody's face just to be like, oh, I'm setting a tone. And like that's I think that the windmill, it only was the thing that was chosen because it scares other people. I think he really just loves like rotating. I think that like if basketball was just rotations, he'd be happy. And that's what makes him such an interesting prospect.
A lot of great ones in this game.
Oh yeah, I think that's what makes him such an interesting prospect. Is like he does so many little things well, and then there's the big things that are the question marks.
Like,
and
I'm just sorry to say here, but I love like this pick and roll play.
Yes,
he kind of like basically gets the eyes on Balsha and then kicks it over to Nathaniel Jack for the corner three.
Yeah, jumping in the air, using the eyes, using like the internal gravity. It's a Halliburton play. I mean, in terms of jumping up, making a read, and forcing the defense to be, very active in their decision making, not just giving what they take. I think the thing that you can get into with Scottie is that he can struggle at times to get to spots. Because his handle's a little bit weak. He doesn't have a ton of burst. I would go so far as to say he's like a poor athlete. He's a good horizontal athlete, but like in terms of pop, both in terms of first step and explosiveness, he grades out pretty poor. There's questions about the combine numbers because the standing reach and the vertical don't really make sense. But like,
no, the standing reach made sense, PD.
Yeah, I was trying to be cordial.
The vertical is like, if that is true, that
it doesn't show up on tape. It doesn't show up.
I don't know if you saw like P3.
Wait, are we doing that right now? Because I can do that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So P3 released a statistic that said that Scottie Barnes measured the 99th percentile of like a drop box jump. And the thing is that he did.
I didn't get it.
The thing is that they measured one aspect of that, which is he drops off the box when told to, lands on the ground, jumps up, and hits a number. The thing is that there are actually multiple elements you can test within that, and one of them is ground time. So how long it takes you to drop down, touch the ground, and get back up. When you watch Bagley jump, he's on the ground for like fractions of a second. If you watch that clip, even at the speed they're playing it, you can tell he's on the ground for a minute. So like, yes, it is important that he can jump high, but it's also how fast can he get to that spot?
Absolutely.
And so that is the thing where people are like, oh, Scottie tested well in that. I'm like, well, he tested well in certain aspects. And in certain aspects, it was not clear because that was not the particular element they were doing. Also, if you're being told when a reaction has to come, it's less valuable data than it being sprung upon you and you having to react, because then you're testing your reaction time, your reflexive athleticism time, and your power. And instead they just tested power. And like, I've never heard anybody question Scottie Barnes' power. That's very obvious.
Yeah. I completely agree with you in the load time is the big thing with Scottie Barnes there. It just takes a while for him to get off the floor.
Yeah, I mean, which is also troubling for a I think for both sides of his potential pick and roll. Like we see it a bunch in these clips. Again, I apologize for this particular method. The render took a little bit longer. It's a little bit grainy. It's a throwback. Back in my day when I watched clips of really good players in 240p, you kids don't understand what that's like, judging what somebody's like when their shoes are a pixel. So I think that it speaks to his role concerns, because like pop is a really, like, especially, you know, quick pop is important for 2-foot jumpers, as you know we talked about with Keon and Springer and Pons. Is you have to get there early to get up faster off too. And if you're the roll guy, like, you got to get up quick, because I mean those windows are closing fast, and especially if you don't necessarily have a ton of pop. It is tremendously interesting to see how he will be utilized, because like I don't think that those physical concerns are necessarily going away.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I liked his defense on Isaiah Wong there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he can slide with smaller guards who he can use his strength against, but I think for guards who are a little bit bigger, they can just get around him. Again, he's really good at that first big stride in a stance. He can really cover ground, but I think if you put him in multiple chains where he has to change direction, he can start to rise up, and guards can take advantage of him. Like, I don't mean to say that he's a bad defender, because like, oh man, is he an awesome scheme defender? It's that every type of defender has their weaknesses. Like, I've seen Kawhi get dropped. Like, it's just every type of defender has guys that give them a little bit of trouble and actions that give them a little bit of trouble. And with Scottie, the idea that like he's truly switchable just like isn't true. And it's also takes away the thing that he's best at, which is like being a link in a rotational scheme where he can just rotate and kill.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we're doing is we're dancing. We're doing the process of elimination Columbo thing before we talk about the real thing, which I think we all know what it is. Do you want to just jump into that now?
Do you want to get into Scottie's like shooting, or
I would say that Scottie is on a flat developmental curve. I've seen him since he was in 8th grade, I think. And aside from the second year at university, he had I'd say where he took like jumpers off the dribble. But those seem more like boredom, like, you know how it is when guys are just like too good for competition level. At Montverde, he didn't do that. At Florida State, he didn't really do that. It took more, but it's still a laborious process. It's going to be multiple years. I think that any expectation of him shooting is going to be centered around volume, not percentage. Just like taking the right jumpers and then slowly working it out. I mean, I don't think he particularly has touch indicators. He's an okay finisher. Yeah. Not a great one. It's not like he has a whole bunch of spin and you know his floaters at the rim 3 or 4 times. Even his like short little jumpers, like they're kind of laborious as well. I think that he's in need of a pretty intense rehabilitation of his jumper. And I think that I generally believe, especially catch and shoot jumpers are fixable for pretty much everybody. It's just a thing the NBA is generally good at. That being said, like, you want to draft him into a place where like you can find value from him where it doesn't necessarily need him to be a straight 5 who can roll and also pop. I think that slotting him in as a connector who doesn't necessarily need to shoot or create is in a situation that everybody has, and a situation that everybody has for a lottery pick, especially a top 10 pick. But I think for him, that's certainly a possibility. And I think there are places that it is possible. I just want to get him to the best long-term developmental situation, and that may not be a lot of places that he's mocked to.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. But yeah, I saw here he had one earlier where he just like completely shanks it off the backboard, but he had that kind of nice little like hook where he actually, I think like that's one of the few times he actually like kind of gets to the paint. The other thing I noticed with Florida State is like, it just seemed like he had kind of like a pretty heavy creation burden. And like, I think he could be potentially like pretty good off cuts, like, you know, doing some things off ball that he didn't really have the chance to do. Because like, you know, between he and Raekwon Gray, like it was pretty much those guys.
Love me some Raekwon Gray.
I do too. Yeah, I absolutely loved Raekwon Gray. The other Raekwon, who was their starting point guard, not ideal. I like you saw a clip.
Oh, I mean, I loved it. The whirling dervish of knives defenses. Like I know I'm a big offense over defense guy, but I do hold a soft spot in my heart for the idea of wheeling out multiple 6'8" dudes and being like, yeah, we might score 40 points, but like every time you touch the paint, you will bleed.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I just really wonder what he would look like in kind of more of a context where, you know, he would be playing the position he actually is going to be playing in the NBA.
That leads to I'm sorry to jump in, but you asked a question that I've kind of been I've been circling for a long time, which is I believe Scottie is best as a help side defender and an organizing defender, like sort of a linchpin of a defense. But I also don't know who I want him to guard most, because I think that he's good on primaries, but I also think that that's not especially his like. I think there are better primary options, and it also like the more you have him be a primary, the less he can be an organizing force, because like basically nobody can do both. So like. Mm-hmm. What is your ideal defensive usage for a guy like Scottie? Do you want him to guard secondaries, which like might be a little bit smaller usually? Or do you want him to like kind of take the third guy who maybe has a less physical challenges and allows him more time to organize, but maybe he may not be able to overwhelm as much? Like because they don't have the ball in their hands?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure about him guarding primaries either. But I'm just kind of thinking like, you know, like the bigger wings, like I really like how comfortable he is just out on the perimeter in general. And what I'll say, like, I know that's kind of like a vague answer, but when you notice somebody is at least comfortable being out on the perimeter and playing defense, like at the size of a Scottie Barnes, to me, that's something in a draft prospect. Like that's something that like you just don't see with tons of players. So yeah, like to me that was at least a very encouraging aspect of Scottie Barnes as a prospect and at Florida State. So yeah, I feel like he can do a little bit like I would say more secondaries, and then like I'm very in on him kind of guarding like, you know, like a 3-4, like somebody like that, like you know, and just seeing what happens, because I think that he has some great instincts there that I think we saw in some of the clips in this Miami game and just throughout like his entire body of work as a prospect.
Yeah. I think I think he's a fascinating prospect because like I think he's a less flexible team building tool than people assume, because like he does have a lot of different defensive utility, but it's kind of specific defensive utility. But that being said, he isn't a piece that allows you to do everything, but I think he's a piece that allows you to unlock a lot of different defensive coverages, and disparate coverages. But he's not like a guy who solves every problem. He's not like a one-man island where it'll solve half of your issues, because you're like, yeah, he's on primary. All right, on the weak side, we're doing this. And I think that that's what the idea of him was like 18 months ago. And I like that people have started to triangulate on what he is, because what he is so cool. It's not Draymond, because it's not like it's more perimeter focused, because he doesn't have the pop Draymond does. He's smaller, but he doesn't have the pop. That being said, like I'm really excited to see how NBA defensive coordinators really just leverage so much of the fun micro defensive skills. And I'm so excited to catalog all of them, because man, he's going to be just the easiest source for that.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always been a huge Scottie Barnes fan, and maybe that kind of blinds me to some of the aspects where people are down on him as a prospect, and I don't like the intangible factors and things like that, like just kind of give me a good feeling about his development. I know I hate doing this, but have you seen him shooting like just in like workouts and like stuff like that, because it doesn't look as bad as it used to, though.
But
right?
again, game
like,
pressures, game pressures, game
no,
pressures.
Like, and I'm not saying that like that means he's going to be like a 35% like 3-point shooter. But yeah.
I would be fine if he was a 32% 3-point shooter
Absolutely.
on real volume. On real volume, if he shoots 30% on 32% on real volume, that is a huge improvement.
Absolutely. I'll be honest. I'm pretty happy with how he shot at Florida State. Like,
yeah, I mean, at times it was a little, at times it was a little teeth pulley, but he shot it.
He took 43s.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that,
it's some of those were a little bit of, I would say, heaves. I think there might be there might be a little bit of noise in there, but hey, I think it's growth. I think midway through the year I was a lot more down on his shooting development. The second half of the year was a lot more positive. I will say that. All in all, I think Scottie is really interesting, and a pretty unique prospect. Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts on Scottie before we move into our last prospect of the day?
Bryce, what's up?
I'm having a good time. That was the best Scottie Barnes breakdown I could ever ask for. He's someone who I can't make up heads or tails about. It's similar to like Jalen Johnson, and that they're both guys who clearly have like clear collections of skills, but I think are differently, but both very context dependent in terms of what role they're going to fill. I worry someone is going to draft Scottie Barnes and think he's Draymond Green, and when he's not Draymond Green, that's going to hurt. So, but I think in a great context, Scottie Barnes is an all defense, like perennial all defense type player who is also one of the best connecting passers in the league. So
yeah, I'm excited to see NBA teams triangulate on what that means, because I think that like Draymond is an archetype and there are many micro sub archetypes within it, and we're going to see a lot of players. I mean, Usman Garuba is certainly, something like this, like sub archetypes of guys who are who can be fours, who can be fives, but operate defensively as fives and mentally, where they want to cap in a defense from the back line. It's just they're not doing it from the paint always. Sometimes they're doing it from the wing or the corner, and that's the fascinating part. I think that it's going to spark a much needed look at broad defensive skills, because now it's like, oh, if a guy's any kind of good help ball defender, he's a Draymond. It's like, well, that's a lot of ground to cover. Also, like comparing people to Hall of Famers is bad. All right.
One last thing. I'm sorry to put him on the spot, but I need to hear from my friend Mitch Libanoff on this, because I thought he had a fantastic breakdown when we were talking the other day. So, Mitch, please give your piece on Scottie Barnes.
Might be muted, maybe.
I can hear you now.
Good now.
We've lost you. I don't know the Jeopardy theme. I can hear. No, that's Mikey.
Oh, yeah, that's me.
That's cruel.
Mitchie, we need you.
Well, until Mitch has figured his audio out, I don't want to make this question come off so simpy, but if you were an organization, if you were in the front office, who would you feel more comfortable drafting? Like for out of Jalen Johnson and Scottie, is it Scottie, or is there a little bit more nuance?
I would feel more comfortable with Scottie, because like we talked about in the Jalen Johnson thing.
How am I sounding now?
I can hear you perfectly.
Yes, Mitch.
Okay.
All right.
My bad.
It's okay. These things happen. I just I'm really running out of gas here, guys. My apologies.
Your second win is impeccable, dude.
We're on like 9th wins. We don't have to get into it. Mitch, your Scottie Barnes piece.
No, so what I was saying to Mikey the other night was Draymond came into the league weighing about 250 pounds. Like there's something to be said about Draymond's ability to guard fives on an island by himself, along with all the other help responsibilities and rotating he was doing. Like, bigs couldn't take advantage of him in the post, and that's effectively what played them off the court. Because when he's initiating offense, on the perimeter, and then they're not like guys like Aldridge or Nurkic or whoever, like their inability to post him up because of how strong he was, like that's kind of the separator from Scottie and other guys the last couple of years who were, compared to Draymond, was that Draymond was a beast coming in, and, people were like, oh, he's overweight and undersized. It's like Draymond was strong as shit. Like, you couldn't move him. That was kind of the underrated physical trait that he possessed that kind of broke other teams' offenses.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that negotiating anyone as Cade is like immediately talking about people after 2005 as an Allen Iverson type scorer. It's like, yeah, it's not how that works. I think that it's going to be an inflection point for how we discuss things. All right, Trayman time.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So give me the 5 things about Trayman.
5 things about Trayman. He is quite hit or miss, but possesses a variety of intriguing skills. This game in particular, it really shows the 2 extreme endpoints on like what makes him so interesting as a prospect and what makes him so frustrating. He's got a intriguing combination of shooting, dribbling, and passing for a guard, like the ability to combine all 3 well at times. He does have his ball handling and footwork combination, his ability to create space off the dribble to get his own shot in particular is super interesting quality that he has that don't see in a whole lot of other lead guards in this class. His craft in the pick and roll. They didn't show up a whole lot in this game, and the clips that I actually sent you were really him getting his own shot off. Because for what I was gonna focus on for this was like that's like where he's gonna make or break for himself in the league is like his ability to get his own shot first and foremost, because where it starts to like come apart, other than he's got a flat shot. Well, I think he has touch. It's pretty flat. His lack of vertical explosion and the size issues at times where he's like tall, but he's got a weird body in that he's sort of tall, but also not extremely long. So like he doesn't use his height well.
And he recently grew 3 inches in between his freshman and sophomore year. He was like 6'3", and now he's like 6'5"-ish. Do I have that correct?
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Thank you. Please correct me. My fault.
No, it was at the combine. They listed him at 6'5" at Florida, but at the combine he was 6'3" and a quarter. I think
that is a dramatic difference.
Yeah. And that was without shoes. But yeah, still.
Yeah, he has when I saw him live, I saw him at McDonald's All-American, and he has put on a little weight, which is good, but he's still not like, he doesn't use his body well in terms of like getting to where he wants to go with his dribble that, could be a separator when he's not exceptionally quick with the first step or exceptionally explosive, like getting to where he wants, utilizing his body in that way. It's not something that he's very good at yet. But he does use his handle and, shoulder feints, and his body control is good. And that's how he's able to get a lot of these shots off. So his footwork and his body control is good, but he's not, utilizing his body or any strength to like get a shot off as I've seen it.
Yeah. So my biggest question with Trayman is like, how good of a shooter do you think he is? Because like, I think he's a shot taker and I think he's a shot maker, but like for me, I kind of see him as I see him as a combo guard. Like I don't really want him to make a high volume of decisions. which is like, that's a fine archetype. It has a ton of value in today's modern NBA. However, it does hinge upon his ability to like be a shooter with positive or negative momentum. And I feel like a lot of his best makes have negative momentum, whether they're step backs or, coming off DHOs or whatever. I have trouble reconciling like some of the shot making I saw in high school with like some of the percentages I also saw in high school versus like, which were kind of similar to what happened his freshman year of college, and then has a huge jump his sophomore year at Florida. So like, I don't have a great read for his proper shooting level. And that's a hard thing to like not know for a shooter.
Yeah, and in a game like this where they're kind of like they were struggling to run offense at times, and he somehow like ends up with 30, and you're kind of like, you look down and you're like, how the hell did he end up with 30?
Yeah.
And honestly, like, especially rewatching this game, I'm like, I feel like I'm watching Tyler Hero, and then I got mad. Like, that's kind of what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
The shooting motion, first and foremost, he releases it a little bit lower, and on some of these step backs when he's creating these dribbles, you're not like really getting by anybody, and Tyler, okay, like, yeah, there's something about like the way he was moving and dribbling where like he's got like the craft, but he's not blown by people, and at times it's a little sloppy. You're like, oh, Tyler,
yeah,
I see you.
I mean, so do you like, okay, I don't mean this as a comparison. I mean, this is like within the archetype. So like, we both think that Tyler's a solid amount of a better shooter.
Better. I think he's better at stringing makes together.
Okay.
And going on those runs. So I guess yes is the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. But like, I feel like Trey has that in him where he's very much a rhythm shooter. Like once he gets going, he could start knocking him down. In the same way that Tyler can. But yeah, Tyler is a more consistent as an outside shooter, but he's much better at stringing together his makes because he's still streaky himself.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest differences that I've had with like the Tyler Hero franchise player people is that they are very high on his passing. I'm not like especially low, but I don't think I get to that level. How would you compare Trey Mann to like the current Tyler Hero, but also like the Tyler Hero that we saw in Kentucky as a passer and as the ability to like facilitate like multiple actions?
See, like Tyler in Kentucky, I didn't really see. I didn't see the passing a whole lot, whereas like now I've seen instances where he's making plays off the dribble as like that secondary or tertiary option where he's on the move and then he'll make a good pass. Whereas I feel like I've seen flashes of pick and roll passing from Trey that like I just haven't seen at any point really with Tyler, and I'm still like, people who are high up on his passing, like, it's not in the same context or situations where I feel like the instincts that I think Trey possesses and his flash at times, like they're in two separate contexts.
Yeah. I mean, and how about like roughly the same ages? Like, how about rookie Tyler, who had more of a passing burden?
I mean, that's really where I'm like bringing those passing flashes from him. Like he wasn't doing it like in the pick and roll. It was like once defenses were rotating, like then he'd make a good, no look pass off the dribble. He'd find guys who were cutting like in those situations, and it was there. Mm-hmm. He did it, but like those were, I felt like maybe like once a game he'd pull it out, maybe.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a consistent weapon and like his ball handling, especially as a rookie, was so weak where like,
yeah, Trey is so much better as a ball handler. Like I wouldn't even bring that to the table because it's not worth discussing. Right. But that's to me that sort of makes the passing more meaningful of a distinction because it's like Trey can get to spots that Tyler can't. Trey has wiggle that Tyler just will never get to. However, if Tyler is like a nearly similar passer, that kind of is an indictment on Trey's passing ability. Like at least as a consistent decision maker because he gets better windows and he gets better rotations. So to me, that's where like if they're roughly equal, is like I mean I wouldn't say they're equal. Like if they are about the same stock of shooters, obviously they have different qualities. And Trey is a better like creator than like in a lot of ways. It all comes down to the passing, and that's the thing I've struggled with the most. Like the shooting, like I think that it's just my hesitancy of like seeing a lot of that freshman year because I was pretty big high on him and just being like, yo, it's time to hit the button, dog. Like, gets you drafted.
Right.
And so maybe that's my own scars from that. However, like the passing hasn't taken the concordant leap that the shooting did, where like the shooting kind of regulated, right? You probably believe he's somewhere between the two numbers, probably on the higher side. I don't feel like there's that same huge differential, even though defense has treated him entirely different as a sophomore. I don't like is there a set of reads that you're really looking forward to him making on his rookie deal?
Yeah, I think there is, high pick and roll, like playmaking ability that's there. I think it's one of these instances, it's another, college guard who like I don't know if it was, a laziness to him. There was a slight lethargic nature to him at times on offense when I would watch him. Like, not to say I don't want to go into like killer instinct and tangible nonsense, but there's something about like, where you just want him to like go into, okay, now I'm going to create, now I'm going to like, because I have this ability, I'm going to exert myself on the situation and do it. Like too often where you would want him to make those kind of passes, it just wasn't really showing when you would want to see it or when you'd expect it to. So
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully like, first year he's drafted to a team where he's getting those reps running second units, and like that's when he'll get to run a bunch of pick and roll reps and like take advantage of his ability, like we were seeing those clips to step back or create off the dribble and create those passing lanes in a much more wide open offense and hit shooters in different places.
Do you have a particular fit that jumps out to you, or a style of fit that jumps out to you? Because I think I have one I really like. It does involve a trade, unfortunately. But how would you feel about Trey Mann replacing D'Angelo Russell in Minnesota?
That's an interesting one.
Anybody else have a Trey Mann fit?
Yeah, playing off those playing off Ant and playing off
and in Finch's offense. That's a big thing for me, is getting just like what Finch did for Ant. Not that you're going to do the same things, but getting the downhill stuff. Okay.
Definitely.
I think so I'm like all in on Mann, right? I really love a lot of what he does, and I really buy the shot making. I think a lot of his issue, you mentioned the lethargia. I think it comes a little bit from like, I feel like he doesn't recognize the advantages he's created sometimes.
Yes, 100%. That's like, my biggest issue with him. There's
a hole, and he
Deuce has the same problem.
Yeah, I would say Deuce has it even worse. But
yeah, but it's the same idea.
You mentioned like Chris Finch and obviously Cat and Ant. I think that could go for also like the Nuggets could be a great fit, or just like a team with a big man who has some gravity could really, or like a really high level slashing wing could really help him, because he needs like a specific amount of usage, I feel like, where he's not 100%. Like touching the ball every time, but like he can touch the ball in his spots and be forced to make certain types of decisions early on in his career.
All right, gentlemen, I am afraid that I have reached the end of my rope. Please give your plugs. Before you guys give plugs, I just want to say thank you to everybody who stayed with me till the end. Thank you for everybody who delivered in work, that you allowed me to have this platform to stand on. I didn't know how much work this was going to be when I started this morning, and this is probably one of the most fun times I've ever had. Thank you to each and every one of you. You've made this wonderful. You've made me feel like I'm caught up on this cycle, and I am a better person and a better analyst for interacting with you guys. Give your plugs and let's get on out of here.
I'll go first. I don't have this crazy amount of work I'm doing. Eventually, I want to build towards that. But I do have a podcast with my boy Chris Amundsen. It's called Bulls 101 every Saturday night, 11 Central. Pretty much Bull-centric, but in the near future, we're definitely going to be talking about some other teams. So, yeah, man, follow me _Larro Hoops, and that's about it. That's about it, guys. Thank you, PD, as well. You are the man, brother. Know that.
All right, now that we move past that madman.
Yeah, I'll go next. I'm at Bryce Hendrick 14, weird Twitter name. I do the Upside Swings podcast with my buddy Stone and a couple of our other friends. We did a lot of crazy work for this draft cycle that I don't think we'll ever do again. But you know, while it was here, it was awesome. I write for Roll Call Sports. PD is a psycho. I thought I was crazy about the draft. This is nuts, and I can't thank him enough for giving me this platform to talk about someone most people consider boring in Matt Mitchell. So thank you so much, PD.
Of course.
Mikey.
Mike,
I'll go. Yeah, so Michael Visenberg. I used to write for Draft Site. Now I write for Perspective Insight, which I highly recommend. They have some fantastic draft content. Pro Insight on Twitter. My Twitter is NBA Draft Mikey V. I do a podcast with my brother. It's called Viseland. And yeah, just PD, you are a connector and a jumbo initiator.
Oh my God, y'all gotta stop.
Absolutely fantastic.
Mitch, give your plugs. I can't hear this anymore. I can't hear this. Every time y'all do this when I gotta say goodbye.
I know you didn't.
In 3 seconds, I'm hanging up. If Mitch doesn't start talking, I'm hanging up.
Stop me from
At Mitch _Libanoff. If you guys want to talk aliens, slide in the DMs or just in the Menchies. We can talk aliens. We can talk basketball. Not writing for anywhere right now, but I'll talk draft with anybody. Pete, thank you very much for having me on. This is an amazing endeavor. You've been going at it for what, 13 hours at this point? Like,
yeah, guys, I gotta go. Dude, guys, like, I'm sorry.
Go to sleep.
Have a wonderful night.
Shout to you, PD.